considerable distance apart. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres holds talks in Moscow about the invasion of Ukraine. President Putin refuses to stop the shelling. The world's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, visits the Chernobyl nuclear power plant for the first time since the Russian occupation. We have a special report from the site. Also,
the very fact that troops occupied a nuclear facility in the first place, and then the way they behaved while they were here. The risk of an accident here was real.
Take a look at what's making the front pages this morning. And Russia threatens strikes against Western targets is the lead in the Times. It says the Kremlin is ready to retaliate after remarks by the UK's Armed Forces Minister that Ukraine targeting targets in Russia was completely legitimate. The Star turns his fury on Russia's foreign minister, the man it calls Putin's poodle, for saying that they are at war with NATO and that nuclear conflict is a real possibility.
Russia turns off its gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria as Moscow enforces its new laws on unfriendly states.
The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss calls for the UK and other Western powers to give warplanes to Ukraine as part of long-term military support.
Polish officials say Russia has cut off gas supplies after they missed a deadline to pay in Russian rubles.
This comes as the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss urges the UK, along with other Western powers, to give warplanes to Ukraine. Our reporter Andrew Plant has the details.
Ukrainian armoured vehicles heading towards the front line, Donbass in eastern Ukraine, where Russian bombing is increasing by the day. Russia fighting not just Ukrainian resistance, but pushing back now against countries helping Ukraine, from today cutting off its gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria in retaliation for sanctions imposed on Russian companies.
We have received threats from the Russian Federation, from Gazprom. Poland had previously prepared to diversify gas supplies. We will be able to protect our economy, protect households and Poles against such a dramatic step by Russia.
As thousands continue to flee the fighting, Russia has now said it has the right to attack specific targets in Ukraine, even if a Western advisor is present, as tensions between Russia and the West increase. Germany has now said it will send around 50 anti-aircraft tanks to the fight, a major change in its policy. Meanwhile, UK Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, in a speech later today, will vow to support Ukraine for the long haul and say Britain and other Western powers should send warplanes to the country, something Ukraine has repeatedly called for. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, after meeting the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, issued a warning to the world that Russia, he said, should no longer be trusted with nuclear facilities.
No one in the world can feel safe knowing how many nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons and related facilities and technology the Russian state has. We need global control over Russia's nuclear facilities and nuclear technology.
In Kyiv, demolition work has started on a monument symbolizing the historic ties between Russia and Ukraine. The hope is still for negotiation to end this war. Russia, though, showing no sign of changing course. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
We're joined now by our correspondent Joe Inwood, who, as you can see, is in Kyiv for us this morning. Joe, always good to talk to you. Give us an update on what happened with regards to that meeting with the UN yesterday. What was the progress on that?
About as little progress as we had expected in advance. Antonio Guterres had to go. The United Nations have to be seen to be engaging, to be trying to do something about this. But both sides are so far apart, and he said as much yesterday. He said that there are basically two different visions of how this war began and what is going on here in Ukraine. The one that the Russians have, that basically they say justifies them annexing large parts of the east and the south of the country, and the one that the United Nations has, shared with the Ukrainians themselves and much of the rest of the world. What was quite interesting, that after the meeting with Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, he had a meeting with Vladimir Putin. Now, that was delayed by quite a while and didn't happen because Vladimir Putin was spending the day engaging in sporting events and congratulating sporting medal winners. So that maybe tells you something about how he conceived of these talks. talks. Now, not today, but tomorrow we are expecting Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to come here to Kyiv. But what those talks can achieve when so little was reached in Moscow, well, it's quite hard to know.